Hi guys, this is Professor Hobbs. Welcome back to our video series on dosage calculation using dimensional analysis. For this video, we're going to cover oral and parenteral dosage problems. So hopefully in the previous video, you got a handle on the rules that we're going to use for dimensional analysis, the 5 rules, and how to set your problems up. So moving forward, now we're going to practice setting these problems up and solving them using dimensional analysis for these oral and parenteral type dosages. So just to be clear, these do not include IV drug calculations or IV infusions rather. We will go over IV infusions in the next video, and that will be drops per minute and milliliters per hour. So we'll go over that in the next video. But for this one, we're going to stick with oral, either tablets, capsules, or a liquid preparation, maybe a suspension, and medications that we'll use for injection. So for IM or subcutaneous type medications. Okay, and they're both solved the same way. So you're just going to see these mishmash of problems that we're going to work on, and they're all going to be solved the same way using those 5 steps that we talked about in the last video. Okay, so just as a reminder, don't forget that when you're solving these problems, you want to solve them the same way every time. You want to use all 5 steps every time. One of the biggest traps that I see students fall into is they look at a problem and they say, well, I can solve this without doing all of these steps, or I don't need to cancel and check my units of measure, or I don't need to build my box. And so what happens is when you're taking these high stakes tests is that's great, but you're more likely to make errors because you're nervous, you're taking a high stakes test, and you are more likely to make a mistake is what I've found when you don't follow these steps in order. So these steps, these 5 dimensional analysis steps are designed to kind of create muscle memory for you so that no matter what the NCLEX throws at you, no matter what the doctor throws at you, you are able to solve this problem because you're going to use the same 5 steps every time. You're going to follow the same rules every time. Okay, so I again caution you against trying to step outside of that, 5-step process and try to do things your way, because that's when mistakes will be made. Okay, so I really do encourage you to, even if the problem looks easy, just go ahead and do all 5 steps. Okay, so don't forget you need to learn your conversions if you haven't already. Don't forget that you need to always check your units of measure when you're solving these problems. So one of the things that we want to look at when we look at these problems is, do the dosing schedules and the units of measure match with regards to what the doctor has ordered or the practitioner has ordered and what the question is asking you to solve for? Okay. If they don't match, that's fine, not a big deal. We just have to put a conversion in there. Okay, so the beauty of dimensional analysis is it will tell you as you're following the steps, okay, working the problem out correctly the way that I'm showing you how to do it, the problem itself will tell you what you need to plug in next. Okay, so if you need a conversion, the problem is going to tell you you need a conversion. So it's really great. It's why I love this method. Okay, so let's move on and let's start working some of these problems out. Don't forget, most of the time the problems are going to ask you specifically, how many tablets will you administer per dose? How many milliliters will you administer per day? Something like that, okay? But every once in a while, there's a problem that doesn't ask, doesn't give you that, that prompt. So if that happens, don't panic. Just look at what you have on hand. Look at whatever form you have on hand, because that's how you're going to be giving it to the patient. So if it's a tablet or liquid suspension, whatever it is, that's what you're going to solve for if the problem doesn't specifically ask you, okay, what you're solving for. Okay, so let's jump in and start working these problems. We're going to use the 5 steps every time, and we're going to just work a series of these problems, and then we'll send you off with some practice problems and let you get really good at this and get the hang of it, and then we'll come back and we'll work on some different types of problems. Okay. All right. So first things first, let me get this video out of the way here. Let me preface this actually by saying I've had probably 5 or 6 recordings today, and I don't know what's going on. Hopefully this one works, but I have to get through the recording. So hopefully I don't have any more glitches. But if I do, please just bear with me. I'm doing the best I can. I don't know what's going on today. I don't usually have this many problems. It's really, I can't get my pencil to write on the iPad effectively. So hopefully this is not a huge problem. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video and let's get started. Okay, so let's again remind ourselves what kind of information we need to dig out of these problems. We need to dig out the order. So whatever it is the doctor is asking you to administer, and we need to dig out what we have on hand or in stock. Okay, those are consistently what you're going to need for these oral and parenteral problems. Again, let's look at units of measure and dosing schedules. If they don't match, we just need to enter a conversion. And again, if the problem does not specify what form you're administering, look at what you have on hand. Okay. All right. So let's start with this problem. This is an order we received for repaglinide, 1.5 milligrams TID with meals. Available is repaglinide, 1 milligram scored tablets. And the question says, how many tablets will you administer per dose? Okay, so step 1, what are we looking for? So the question says, how many tablets will you administer per dose? So we're going to write tablets per dose on the left-hand side of our page. That's our reminder. What are we looking for? Okay. Second step is going to be to build our box. Okay, in our box goes our order. And remember, we want to write our order as either per day or per dose, depending on what the doctor has ordered. So let's look at our order here. Our order is for repaglinide 1.5 milligrams TID. Okay, that means this patient is going to get 1.5 milligrams of this medication 3 times per day. So that means 1.5 milligrams per dose. Okay, they're not getting 1.5 milligrams total over the course of the whole day. They're getting 1.5 milligrams each dose of this medication. So we're going to write that in our box, 1.5 milligrams over 1 dose. Okay. All right, second step is to look and see what we have available. So let's look at our problem. Our problem says available is repaglinide 1 milligram scored tablets. Okay, so we're going to write that in our box, 1 milligram over 1 tablet. Okay, that means that every tablet of this medication has or contains 1 milligram of medication in it. Okay. All right, so once we build our box, then we can go ahead and start plugging our information into our problem. That's step 3. Okay, remember your problem will tell you what you need to plug in. Start here at this left-hand side of your page where you wrote what you were looking for. So the very first part of our problem, the numerator and the numerator need to match. Okay, so what we're looking for here, tablets, needs to go here. It needs to match. The very first section of our problem always needs to match. Okay, that'll help us not mess up how we're plugging stuff into this problem. So if my problem says I need tablets here, I need to come up to my box and find tablets. And I have tablets right here, but it's not in the numerator. Remember, I said it has to match this very first section. So I'm going to flip it. Okay, remember our last video, we talked about how we can flip anything we want in order to make it fit into our problem and follow our rules. So I'm going to flip that and write it as 1 tablet over 1 milligram. Okay, then I'm going to cross it out. All right, now the problem is going to tell us what we need to enter next. We have milligrams here, so the problem says we need to have milligrams here. Remember, we're trying to cancel out units of measure. That's really the point of dimensional analysis. So if we have a unit of measure here that's milligrams, where did my thing go? Milligrams here, we need to have milligrams here so that we can cancel those units of measure out. So we're going to come up to our box and find milligrams. And we have milligrams right there. So we're going to enter it just like that, 1.5 milligrams per 1 dose. And we're going to cross it out. Okay, once we've used everything in our box, that's our signal to check our problem and see if we're done setting it up. Okay, so we're going to move on to step 4. We're going to cancel out like units of measure. So if the unit of measure is in the numerator and the denominator, we can cancel it out. So I'm going to cancel out milligrams. And then I'm going to check and see what units of measure I'm left with. And this is my check. This is what tells me if I'm done setting my problem up. Tablets per dose is what I'm left with, and that matches what I'm looking for. That's my goal. When I'm done setting this problem up and canceling all light units of measure out, I should only have what I'm looking for left. So tablets over dose is what I have left, and that matches what I'm looking for. So that means I'm done setting my problem up and I can do my math. And I'm going to do my math straight across top, straight across bottom. Okay, so I'm going to take 1 times 1.5, which is 1.5, and 1 times 1, which is 1. And then I'm going to divide 1.5 by 1. Okay, 1.5 divided by 1 is 1.5. And then my units of measure is how I'm going to end my answer. And those are always going to be right here. So 1.5 tablets per dose. Okay. All right, let's do another one. All right, this one reads, order for cefadroxil 1 gram POBID. Available is cefadroxil 500 milligram capsules. How many capsules will you administer per dose? Step 1 is, what are we looking for? So let's look in our problem. It says, how many capsules will you administer per dose? So I'm looking for capsules per dose. Okay. Step 2 is to build my box. In my box goes my order. Okay, remember, over day or dose, depending on what the doctor ordered. So right here it says 1 gram POBID. So that means that twice a day this patient is going to get 1 gram of medication. So 1 gram per dose. So 1 gram over 1 dose. Okay, I also need what I have on hand. And the problem says I have available 500 milligram capsules. So I'm going to write 500 milligrams per capsule or over 1 capsule. Okay. All right, so once I've built my box, I can start plugging into my problem. The problem will tell me what to enter first. I'm going to come down here and find what I'm looking for. Remember, numerator needs to match numerator in this very first section. We're not worrying about trying to match the denominator, just the numerator. So it says capsules here, so I need to put capsules here. So I come up to my problem and I find capsules. Again, we see the capsules is not in the numerator, it's in the denominator, but that's okay, we can flip it. So let's flip it and write it as 1 capsule over 500 milligrams. And then we'll cross it out. Okay. Now let's see what the problem tells us to do next. We have milligrams here, so we need milligrams here. So let's go and look in our box and find milligrams. But we don't have milligrams in our box. We only have grams. That's okay. Remember what we talked about. If the units of measure don't match, we just have to add a conversion. So we dig into our brain and find that conversion between grams and milligrams, because we memorized all of them like we were supposed to, right? So we're going to find that conversion and enter it in our box as a fraction. So we know that 1 gram is equal to 1,000 milligrams. Okay, that's just a conversion between grams and milligrams. So now I have that in my box, I can enter that into my problem. And that's what I'm going to do, but I'm going to flip it because remember I want this milligrams here, so I need milligrams here. In order for my problem to be solved correctly, I've got to follow the rules, and the rule says whatever unit of measure I have here, I need to match here. So I'm going to flip that and write it as 1,000 milligrams over 1 gram. Okay, and then crossed it out. All right, now the problem says we have grams here, we need grams here. So I'm going to look up in my box and find grams. And I have grams right there. 1 gram over 1 dose. And then I'm going to cross it out. Okay, once I've crossed out everything in my box, then I'm going to look at my problem and cancel out like units of measure and make sure that I've set up my problem correctly. So in this problem, I can cancel grams because I have them in the numerator and the denominator. And I can cancel milligrams because I have them in the numerator and the denominator. And I see that I'm left with capsules per dose, which matches what I'm looking for here. Okay. So that means I can go ahead and do my math straight across. So I'm going to take 1 times 1,000 times 1, which is 1,000. And then I'm going to take 500 times 1, which is 500. And then I'm going to divide 1,000 by 500, which equals 2. And my units of measure are going to be over here on the left-hand side of my page, capsules per dose. Okay, so my answer to this question is 2 capsules per dose. Okay. All right, let's do another one. Let me clear this one. Okay, let's look at this one. This problem states you have an order for potassium chloride, 30 milliequivalents, POBID, for 2 doses. Available is potassium 20 milliequivalents per 15 milliliters. How many milliliters will you administer per dose? Round your answer to the nearest tenth. Okay, step 1, what are we looking for? The question says, how many milliliters will you administer per dose? So we're looking for milliliters per dose. Step 2 is to build our box. And in our box goes our order, which is right here. And it says that we are to give potassium chloride 30 milliequivalents, POBID. So twice a day. So we're going to give 30 milliequivalents each dose. So we're going to write that 30 milliequivalents per 1 dose. Okay, we also need what we have available, and that's going to be right here. It says available 20 milliequivalents per 15 milliliters. So 20 milliequivalents per 15 milliliters. Okay, once we build our box, then we're going to go ahead and start plugging into our problem. Okay, what are we going to plug in first? Well, let's look over here. Remember, we want this to match what we put in here in the numerator. So we're looking for milliliters, so we want milliliters here. So let's come up here and find milliliters. There it is right there. Okay, but we're going to flip it because we want that to match. They both need to be in the numerator in that first section. So we'll flip it and write it as 15 milliliters over 20 milliequivalents. And then cross it out. Okay, I have milliequivalents on the bottom here. I need milliequivalents on the top here. So I come up to my box and look and find milliequivalents. And I have 30 milliequivalents over 1 dose. And then cross it out. Okay, once I've used everything in my box, I can now look and see if I can cancel any like units of measure. And I can. I have milliequivalents in the numerator and denominator here, so I can cancel those out. And the units of measure that I'm now left with are milliliters per dose, which matches what I'm looking for. So that means I can go ahead and do my math straight across. 15 times 30 is 450. 20 times 1 is 20. And then I'm going to divide 450 by 20, and that gives me 22.5. And my units of measure, again, on the left-hand side of my screen, are milliliters per dose. Okay. All right, let's do another one. Okay, this problem states you have an order for elixophyllin liquid 0.24 grams stat. Available is elixophyllin liquid 80 milligrams per 5 milliliters. How many milliliters will you administer for this stat dose? Okay, so step 1, what are we looking for? We're looking for milliliters per dose. Okay, I'm not sure why that came up there. Okay, sorry about that. Milliliters per dose. So okay, step 2 is to build our box. And in our box goes our order. And we need to make sure we put it over day or dose. So this is a 0.24 gram stat order. That means it's a 1 dose order. So 0.24 grams per 1 dose. Okay. We also need what we have on hand. It says right here, available is elixophyllin liquid, 80 milligrams per 5 milliliters. So we're going to write that, 80 milligrams per 5 milliliters. Okay. All right, so now we've built our box. We can start plugging into our problem, starting with what we're looking for. So we're looking for milliliters right here. So we need milliliters right here. Come up to our box and find milliliters. We just need to flip it so that that's on top. So we're going to flip it and write it as 5 milliliters over 80 milligrams. And then cross it out. Okay, we have milligrams on the bottom here. We need milligrams on the top here. Come up to our box and look for milligrams, but we don't have milligrams. We only have grams. That's okay, because we know our conversions. And we know that, I'm just going to write it here, 1 gram is equal to 1,000 milligrams. And we can plug that into our problem. Okay, so let's plug it in. We're going to flip it because remember, we want the units of measure to cancel each other out. So we're going to write it as 1,000 milligrams over 1 gram. Okay. Now we have grams on the bottom here. So we need grams on the top here. So let's go up to our box and find grams. There we go. We have grams in the box. 0.24 grams over 1 dose. And then cross it out. Okay, once we've used everything in our box, that means we need to cancel out like units of measure and see what we're left with. So we're going to cancel out grams, and we're going to cancel out milligrams. And we see that we're left with milliliters per dose, which matches what we're looking for. So that's good news, right? Now we can just do our math straight across. So we're going to do 5 times 1,000 times 0.24, which equals 1,200. And then we're going to do 80 times 1 times 1, which is 80. And then 1,200 divided by 80 equals 15. And our units of measure on the left-hand side of the page are milliliters per dose. Okay. All right, let's do one more. Okay, so let's clear this and we'll solve another one. So this question gives us an order for promethazine, 25 milligrams PO at bedtime. Available is promethazine, 6.25 milligrams per teaspoon. How many milliliters will you administer per dose? Okay, so step 1, what are we looking for? We're looking for milliliters per dose. Okay, so let's put that here, milliliters per dose. Okay, step 2 is to build our box. And in our box, we're going to put our order, which is 25 milligrams PO at bedtime. So 1 dose. You're getting 1 dose at bedtime. So we're going to say 25 milligrams, 1 dose. Okay, we also need the what we have available, and that's going to be right here for you, 6.25 milligrams per teaspoon. So 6.25 milligrams over 1 teaspoon. Okay, now we've built our box, so we can go ahead and start plugging into our problem. And of course, like always, we're going to start with what we're looking for. So this one may trip you up a little bit because we're looking for milliliters. There we go. We're looking for milliliters, right? So we need milliliters here. But when we come up here, there's no milliliters in our box anywhere. All right, the only volume we see here is teaspoons. So we need to enter a conversion first. The very first thing we enter is a conversion. So that can happen. So don't let it trip you up. So what do we know about teaspoons to milliliters? We know we need to convert, right? Because the volume that we have in the box is teaspoons, but the question is asking us how many milliliters. So we need to know that conversion between teaspoons and milliliters. And that conversion is 1 teaspoon is equal to 5 milliliters. Okay, so we're going to write it in our box. Now we're looking for milliliters, so we can go ahead and plug that conversion into our problem. We're going to flip it though. Remember, we want that milliliters on top. Okay, the rules are the same no matter what we're plugging in here. So I'm going to flip it and write it as 5 milliliters over 1 teaspoon, and then I'm going to cross it out. Okay, now I have teaspoons on the bottom and I need teaspoons on the top. So I'm going to come up here and find teaspoons in my box. And I have teaspoons right here, right? But this teaspoon is in the denominator. I need for it to be in the numerator. Remember, I want to cancel it out. So I need to have one in the denominator and one in the numerator. So I'm just going to flip it. Not a big deal. Remember, we can flip anything. So I'm going to write it as 1 teaspoon over 6.25 milligrams, and then cross it out. Okay, now I have milligrams on the bottom here. I need milligrams on the top here. So I come up to my box and I find milligrams. So I'm going to enter that, 25 milligrams over 1 dose. Okay, cross it out. So I've crossed out everything, or I've used everything in my box. So now I'm going to cancel out like units of measure and see what I'm left with. So I'm going to cancel out milligrams and teaspoons. And I am left with milliliters per dose, which matches what I'm looking for. So I can go ahead and solve my problem. Straight across multiplying, 5 times 1 times 25 is 125. 1 times 6.25 times 1 is 6.25. 125 divided by 6.25 is 20. And my units of measure are on the left-hand side of the page there, milliliters per dose. Okay. All right, so this is your, these were your basic oral and parenteral medications. So the problems may be worded a little differently. They may be presented to you in various formats. Don't let that trip you up. Remember what you're looking for. Remember your rules, okay? Somewhere in that problem, it's going to ask you what it is you're looking for, or either you can use what you have available. Somewhere in that problem, it's going to give you an order, and it's going to give you the order as either per dose or per day. And somewhere in that problem, it's going to give you what you have available. So regardless of how the problem is presented to you, those are the pieces of information you need in order to solve the problem. Okay, so I'm going to stop this video and let you guys work on some of these basic oral and parenteral calculation problems. And then we will come back a little bit later and we'll do some IV calculation, IV infusion calculations, sorry. Okay, all right, so good luck you guys, and I'll see you back here in a little while.